Top 5 Richest Countries in the World. What does it mean for a country to be rich? Is it its collective buying power, its population and workforce, or something else? The answer is not always so clear-cut, and there are many ways of judging the wealth of a country. The gross domestic product, or GDP, of a country is determined annually by the IMF and the World Bank. There's also the GDP per capita, which represents a citizen's annual income. Now, here at The World of Finance, we think that the GDP per capita is the most accurate way of judging a country's wealth, because a higher GDP per capita means that all the citizens in said country are living an overall better life than other countries. With that clear, let's look at the 5 richest countries in the world in terms of GDP per capita. Before we begin, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Now, let us get right into it. 5. Macau SAR. GDP per capita, $86,500. A few years ago, it was widely predicted that the Las Vegas of Asia would soon overtake the United States in terms of GDP. Once a province of the Portuguese Empire, Macau is now a prosperous special administrative area of the People's Republic of China, thanks to the liberalization of the casino sector in 2001. This little peninsula in the south of Hong Kong has become a cash cow thanks to its relatively large population of over 600,000 and the sprawling presence of more than 40 casinos throughout an area of around 30 square kilometers. That is, until the machine began earning losses instead of gains. International travel ground to a standstill when COVID hit, and Macau briefly fell out of the top 10 wealthiest countries in the world. Macau is the only nation in the list whose per capita income is lower than it was before the epidemic began. At about $125,000 in 2019, it is $40,000 lower than it was before the pandemic began. The status quo has changed significantly. Macau has thus far depended on visitors from mainland China, Hong Kong, and Taiwan to replace its dwindling foreign clientele. The city was then completely shut down due to the fresh epidemic last year, just before the busy summer vacation travel season set to begin. Local casinos are losing an estimated $20 million per day due to declining foot traffic and closures. So even though this country is on the list, there's no guarantee that it'll stay. 4. Qatar. GDP per capita, $97,514. There are no major natural resources in Qatar except for its oil, so the economy relies on the support of liquefied natural gas, as oil is the backbone of the country's economy. In fact, half the country's GDP comes from the sale of hydrocarbons. The country's population is just 2.8 million, but its oil, gas, and petrochemical reserves are so vast that it has been at the top of the list of the world's wealthiest states for 20 years running. The desert covers the majority of the land, and it receives almost no rain and has no natural sources of water. According to the IMD Economic Competitiveness Index, Qatar is the 18th best country in the world to conduct business in. One of the many areas of public investments is logistics. 1/4 of the freight that enters the Middle East does so via deep water ports in Qatar, and Doha Airport is a major international gateway, which is now serving 50 million passengers annually. Since 2011, Qatar Airways has more aircrafts in service than any other airlines in the world, a far cry from its 4-plane fleet in 1997. Although just around 12% of populations are Qatari natives, COVID-19 spread rapidly in the first months of the pandemic, mainly among low-income migrant laborers living in congestive quarters. This was also the case in many other Gulf nations. Qatar has one of the highest percentages of positive cases in the area, despite repeated quarantines, curfews, and lockdowns. Still, there is evidence of the economy's ability to withstand shocks. It shrank by a manageable 3.5% in 2020, grew by about 1.5% in 2021, and is expected to recover to 3.4% by the end of 2022, thanks to an increase in gas and oil revenues, and the boost from hosting the 2022 World Cup, which will add $1.7 billion to the economy and bring in 1.2 million visitors. 3. Ireland. GDP per capita, $101,509. According to the IMF, Ireland is the third wealthiest country in the world. Because of its thriving agricultural, food, textile, information technology, and mechanical engineering sectors, Ireland's economy has surpassed that of Singapore, Qatar, and the United States. Ireland was thought to be unbeatable up until lately. Ireland's economy continued to thrive despite the many challenges that the rest of Europe was suffering. Its economy increased by more than 4.9% in 2019, making it the fastest growing member of the Eurozone. Surely it's reasonable to assume that COVID made such adjustments. However, Ireland once again exceeded predictions, with GDP growth of 5.8% in 2020, and more than double that at an amazing 13% the following year. Even while most countries can only hope for growth of this magnitude, even the more cautious 2022 projections stand at about 5.2%. Ireland is one of the greatest corporate tax havens in the world, benefiting multinational corporations at the expense of regular citizens. While their standard of living has clearly improved through time, OECD statistics show that their per capita disposable income is now below the average of the organization's other 38 member nations. Most people would be uncomfortable with the concept that their family is rich in a country where the top 20% of the population makes approximately 5 times as much as the lowest 20%. Ireland has been ranked as one of the top 15 nations which retirees would have the best quality of life, and pensions in the nation average about 1,600 euros per month. Natixis considers pension payouts with macroeconomic factors including economy inequality, healthcare access, and unemployment rates to arrive at their final ranking. 2. Singapore. GDP per capita, $105,466. Singapore's wealthiest resident is Chinese restaurant owner Zhang Yang, who is worth an estimated $23 billion. Second on the list is Facebook co-founder Eduardo Saverin, who in 2011 departed the US with 53 million shares of the business and became a permanent resident of the island country. Saverin did not choose Singapore because its urban amenities or its proximity to natural gateways. He picked it because it's the wealthiest fiscal haven with no taxes on capital gains or dividends. But this begs the question, how did Singapore become to be so wealthy? Half of the city's inhabitants states was illiterate when it gained independence in 1965. Well, Singapore, despite having a few natural resources, has become one of the most business-friendly countries in the world because to its people's perseverance and the government's foresight. The adult population of Singapore is now 98% literate, and the country has flourished as a manufacturing and financial center. That is not to say that it has not felt the impacts of the global crisis. In 2020, the GDP fell by a record 5.4%, sending the nation into recession for the first time in more than a decade. However, growth this year is expected to be about 4% more than last year. 1. Luxembourg. GDP per capita in Luxembourg is $135,046. Luxembourg is a great place to visit for many different reasons, including its castles and scenic landscapes, cultural events, and culinary delights. Many people also choose to just open an offshore bank account with a financial institution there and never return. The citizens of Luxembourg have the greatest quality of life in the Eurozone because a considerable portion of the country's income is spent on improving their access to housing, healthcare, and education. The GDP of the Great Duchy therefore rose from negative 1.7% in 2020 to 6.8% in 2021. But this year won't be as bright, as the impacts of the conflict in Ukraine, together with increasing energy and food costs, are projected to dampen corporate confidence and consumer spending. Nonetheless, the country's per capita GDP passed the $100,000 threshold in 2014 and has been rising steadily since. Having people from France, Germany, and Belgium all working in the duchy has helped contribute to its success. Though their labor contributes to GDP growth, foreigner workers are not included in the GDP per capita figures. The National Institution for Statistic and Economic Research of Luxembourg reports a monthly minimum salary of €2,257. This sum is reasonable for adults in unskilled labor positions. The median income in Europe is €5,000 per month. Experts in the insurance, banking, information technology, and utility sectors earn the most money. Businessmen from other countries are drawn to Luxembourg because of its tax advantages. Only profits earned inside the duchy's borders are subject to taxation by foreign corporations. That's all for today's video, and thanks for watching the video. If you liked it, make sure to give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. And while you're here, click to watch one of these 2 videos appearing on your screen right now. We will see you there.